presidential race, still, they're still counting votes. Some people think they know. And so it's interesting to see who's excited about the idea of Joe Biden becoming president. So if you've spent any time browsing social media or watching bitter ex-comedians whine about politics, you know that a lot of people aren't that happy on the left. The same people who pretend that Donald Trump caused all of their problems, the coronavirus, their barren personal lives, seasonal allergies, actually seem full of angst tonight. But we do know at least one core Democratic Party constituency is thrilled. That's corporate America, and especially big tech. Take a look at the stock prices of a big data analytics company like Palantir over the past 3 days. Massive surge, unprecedented. So now that the power of the executive branch, the federal government, could align with the tech monopolies, what's going to happen? The people who have more data on you than you have about yourself could shut everything down. Will they? Well, here's one sign of what we can expect. The night before election night, we opened our show with an argument for why Donald Trump's campaign mattered to decent people in this country, the forgotten people, people who live outside of New York. Millions of people viewed that monologue when we uploaded it onto the internet. And then Facebook censored it. On what pretext? They said it contained, quote, partly false information. They cited a fact check from a political organization, a partisan organization called PolitiFact. According to PolitiFact, it was, quote, mostly false for us to say that elites in Washington ignored the opioid epidemic. Why was it false? Because, quote, by 2015, the White House was calling for a major increase in spending of $1 billion over 2 years to combat the opioid epidemic, which, by the way, continued. In other words, politicians in Washington eventually, after like a decade, threw a big number at a problem. They didn't solve it. They just growled about it a little bit. If you claim otherwise, we will silence you. So data guys with partisan agendas have power over what we say and what we think. We shouldn't be surprised because it's not just here, everywhere. We've given fake experts with no knowledge of anything, with agendas they hide, control over policies from climate change to housing markets to polling and election results. So if you think these people are going to be content with censoring Donald Trump or banning the New York Post, unfortunately, think again. The more they screw up, the more control we give them over every part of our lives. And if Joe Biden and Kamala or whatever she's calling herself make it to the White House, they will have more power than they've ever had before. How should we feel about that? Afraid. So why was our monologue censored, and what role did big tech play in getting Joe Biden elected? Allum Bokhari is the author of Deleted, Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election. Quite a title in retrospect. He joins us tonight. Allum Bokhari, thanks so much for coming on. So we're hoping that Joe Biden will not become the president. If he does, you're going to have this alliance that is going to have consequences for the country, no?
We certainly will. And, I've been covering these tech giants and what they've been doing over the past 4 years at Breitbart News. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's not what they've been doing over the past 4 years. It's what political elites have allowed them to do over the past 4 years.
That's right.
All the institutions that are meant to defend the public interest just sat on their hands and watched as these big tech oligarchs developed the most powerful censorship machine for controlling and manipulating information and swaying elections that we've ever seen, and we're now all living with the consequences. Everyone who says their role is to defend the American public interest from corporate interest and special interest did absolutely nothing. And now we're looking at the possibility of, as you say, a Biden administration that is totally in bed with the tech giants. I'll give you just one example. In the 6 months leading up to the election, Google took Breitbart search visibility on searches for Joe Biden to 0. Total erasure on the world's leading search engine. So they absolutely went all in for Joe Biden. We're seeing Twitter doing it too, censoring the president in the most closely fought and disputed election in living memory. So you can only imagine what Joe Biden is going to do to amplify this. He's called for more censorship. He's called for that on the campaign trail. And if he gets in, he'll have the power of the federal government behind him. It's a very scary situation.
So may I ask, tonight there are a lot of people, many of whom I respect and I'm paying close attention to them, looking for voter fraud, looking for cheating, that may have affected the outcome of the election. I hope they keep looking because it's important. But this seems like voter fraud and cheating and a distortion of our democracy that took place right out in the open. Why is what Google did more significant than what corrupt ballot counters in Philadelphia may be doing? It seems like it's more significant.
Immensely more significant, because where does an undecided voter go if they want to find out more information about a presidential candidate, about Joe Biden or about Donald Trump? Well, they'll go to Google. Where else would they go? And what are they going to be met with? They're going to be met with a stream of propaganda from the mainstream corporate media, which, by the way, is now funded by big tech and artificially amplified in their algorithms, even while they're suppressing their competitors. You, Tucker, they're suppressing you, they're suppressing Breitbart News, they're suppressing all of conservative media. So it's impossible to say that undecided voters weren't influenced by that in a big way. I'm sure they were. And you mentioned voter fraud. If there is voter fraud, they won't let you talk about it. Not even the possibility. They won't even let the president talk about it. So this is where we're at. This is where our ruling elites have allowed us to come, because they did nothing about the problem for the past 4 years, much as the opioid problem you talked about in that segment, that they also don't want you to talk about now.
I'm just ashamed that I ever called any of these people liberal. There's nothing liberal about this. It's fully authoritarian. It's the opposite of liberal. And it's really scary. Allum Bokhari, great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
So if power in Washington changes hands,